Time for to turn our attention to the Champions League. A 2-0 defeat for Chelsea at the hands of Real Madrid, who look pretty good but could probably have another couple of gears if they need it. Graham Hunter, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. Grand, yeah, thanks.
Before we get into Real Madrid, right, because there's so many great things to talk about them, I just do want to get your impression and just the general Spanish impression of what the hell Ted Boehly is doing in charge of a football club. Because every time a story comes out about him, you're like, that can't be true. But you could literally tell me anything at this stage, and I think I would probably believe it.
Jerry, it's not like me to oppose you, but listen, which amongst us, it's about glass houses and stones, which amongst us hasn't gone out for a midweek lunch with Florentino Perez, had a couple of glasses too many, strolled out and told the media we're going to pump Real Madrid 3-0? Which amongst us? So I think you're being harsh.
Well, it's that, and it's the James Corden stuff, and it's the 12-a-side, and it's, we're going to be in the Champions League next season, we're always there. Half of those stories probably untrue, but who cares?
Never mind explaining it. We don't have the time right now to list the ways in which Father Todd to you, has gone completely in the wrong direction. He's rowing one way and everybody else is rowing the other. There was a really good visual example of what you're talking about last night at the Bernabeu. Just like in every Champions League match, the goalkeepers will come out first. So you'll have this in every stadium, this beautiful big green playing surface laid out with either cones everywhere or balls everywhere, as if they were crop circles, because the players are coming out have been set up by their technical staff. And everything's in position for the exercises that they're going to go through in the warm-up. Then gradually, both sets of keepers will be out. And then Chelsea came out long before Real Madrid last night. And it was carnage. There were players everywhere. I'm pretty certain I counted 32 footballers. So with all the associated coaches out there, there was a stage when there were 40-plus people on one half of the pitch. And then the reigning Spanish, European and world champions came out, and a tiny part of the other half of the pitch was occupied. Because you only need, if you include coaches, about 24 good men in the men's game, not in the women's game, in order to dominate the planet and become the most successful footballing unit around at the moment and on a tot-up basis ever. So once they were both out, there was a tiny pocket of green space occupied by Real Madrid doing two rondos, and then Chelsea employees everywhere in the other half. And yeah, I'm a cynic about... No, I'm not a cynic. I'm a critic of the way in which every club has two book list prices for their players. For the general market that come in, and then they have, I know this as a fact, I've been told this directly, they have another list price when Chelsea comes in. I watched the way in which Arsenal's scouting and football direction went awry under Wenger when he didn't have the cojones to sack or remove or create a hierarchy amongst the four different men who all felt they were on equal terms. Dick Best, Steve Rowley, Francis Cagigao, and Arsenal's policy became a mess. Nobody was quite sure who had the final say. There was backbiting in Chelsea. And Chelsea have created a joint director of football structure with a technical director above them. So at the moment, it doesn't matter too much to Frank Lampard because the market's closed. But in terms of when the next coach comes in, when the permanent coach comes in the summer, to whom will he feel that he's answerable? The owners, one of the two football directors, the technical director above him, who will tell him that he's answerable to them. In organisations, power struggles emerge. Chelsea have created it. And I'm not for 1 minute am I saying that any of the people that I'm referring to now in this organogram is the Spanish organisational chart. Excuse me. I'm not for 1 second saying that any of them lacks talent. But the structure's wrong. The structure will propagate power battles, communication difficulties in terms of whose word is final, to whom do you report back if you want to ask something, never mind be answerable for performance levels. I don't understand, because Todd Boehly, remember, is it's not insignificant what he's invested. It's not insignificant that he was the main driver of a purchase which he tried to make in 2019 and finally went through in May 22. There's Feliciano, there's Mark Walter, there's Edad Egboli. So that's a mixture between Todd Boehly and those who comprise Clearlake, and Mark Walter is a personal friend of Todd Boehly. So in terms of, I think you were referring to the fact that Todd Boehly is becoming a watchword for sideshow Bob behaviour. It's a little bit, much though I respect his previous business, entrepreneurial, and indeed emerging sporting success in his own sphere of the world, he's not handling this well. And it occurs to me that the others who've got serious financial stakes in this project may need to be reviewing whether he is the right one to be the front man for the four of them, whether he needs to rein himself in. I bumped into him last night, said, "Good evening, good luck, thanks very much, very pleasant guy." That's not what you were asking. It's not, in my opinion, going particularly well. And I think they're sowing seeds for pretty arid harvests in the future too.
It's funny, Graham, there was one line in your latest ESPN piece, I think it was your latest ESPN piece, that gave me a bit of a giggle when you're talking about Todd Boehly and the Chelsea owners. You said, it's as if the Chelsea owners got hold of Perez's blueprints, spilled several glasses of cheap champagne on them, blasted the damn pages with a hairdryer, turned them upside down and read them backward. Like, is your point that Chelsea are basically a failed Real Madrid?
My point is, let's base it on the fact that Todd Boehly has been trying, his first concrete efforts to buy the club in 2019. That means he must have been thinking about it. You don't make an instant decision to try and spend a couple of billion on a sports project on the other side of the world in a sport you don't know very well. So let's say that this idea took seed in his brain no later than 2018, maybe 2017. You have time to go out, and at that stage they must have been readying themselves to spend the 600 million euros plus. It's in, and wait, that's purchase price. If we think about the contracts that have been awarded, we won't be very far away from $1 billion invest, and the removal of Marina, the managing director, Granovskaya, Peter Cech. Listen, those who've invested will not be far short of €1 billion put into this project at the moment. Never mind purchasing the club, which is another couple of billion. Therefore, if you want to spend the 620 million on player purchases that you've done, there's a very simple template. So rather than just saying Chelsea are failed with Madrid, they had time to say, Florentino Perez has got a similar Galactico idea. Florentino Perez has gone out and with shock and awe tactics has repeatedly over his quarter century in charge of Real Madrid spent bucket loads of money on either initially buying the very best senior players in the world or latterly making sure that he has a scouting network and recommendations that allows him to buy the best young players in the world. Militao came at 21, Fede Valverde came at a very young age, Vinicius and Rodrigo came as teenagers, and they're the players that will put Chelsea out next week. In the past it was Zidane and it was Figo and it was paying the wages to make sure that they stayed of Raul and Roberto Carlos and Ronaldo Nazario. There was a template where it was very, very simple to get into a project saying, we've done our homework, we know what Real Madrid over these last 23 years when they've won 5 or 6 Champions League and 4 or 5, I think it's 5 Champions Leagues and 6 World Club Championships, and they've been less successful in La Liga, but their trophy haul is 33 in 23 years. And you could have gone in there very easily and said, okay, these are the things they've abandoned. These are the absolute certainties. I'm pretty sure they tried to hire Real Madrid's Juni Calafat, who is their principal. It doesn't quite work at Real Madrid in calling somebody a chief scout. Juni Calafat particularly is somewhere between. He doesn't carry the position brand name. He's somewhere between a director of football and a head scout, but he's got executive powers because he's so trusted and his record is so good. I think Chelsea tried to hire him. That wasn't enough. It didn't succeed. They have spent Real Madrid Galactico style money and equivalent to the early part of Florentino Perez's reign, but they've done it in a willy-nilly way. They haven't thought about shedding the bloated numbers that I referred to when I was talking to Ger. They seem to be doing it in a shotgun manner. There's nothing rapier-like. There's nothing specific about it. They for example, they didn't buy a centre forward in the winter market. What have they got? 29 goals in 30 games, or it's 30 and 31. They're one short of a goal per game. They were a little bit shot shy last night. They've got Aubameyang on the books. They didn't register him for the Champions League. It's their money. So boo-hoo. A lot of people listening to Off the Ball AM may be saying, but for the health of football, for our respect for, never mind Todd Boehly, but for Chelsea Football Club, it just looks like a complete porridge.
It's coming across that way, and there was a little bit of that in the performance last night, but actually, when João Felix has the chance in the first minute, here he is back in Madrid. The opportunity is through, and if he'd just been in a slightly better goal scoring form, or if he was a slightly better goal scorer, they could have been 1-0 up, and then it's a completely different game, and one of the great smash and grabs in world football history is on. And maybe if Potter was still the manager, that might have happened. I don't know. Maybe what the whole Frank Lampard thing is just an example of the porridge. Was there anything in the performance from Real Madrid that gave you some pause to think, oof, this team isn't quite at the level that it has been in previous seasons when it's won the Champions League?
Lots of things this season have hinted at that statement, and last night there's no question that first of all, beyond the João Felix opportunity, Militao patrolled him brilliantly. Started off with a disadvantage, made sure that he ran, didn't tackle, didn't jockey, but ran and got to João Felix's left side so that he forced him a little bit right, didn't allow him to cut in, which is what he knew João Felix wanted to do. I thought Militao started from a disadvantage, and that early chance did really, really well, after which it was a routine save for Courtois. The save from Sterling was big. The save after late on when it was 2-0. There were sufficient indications that Chelsea's game plan had been good. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the way that Chelsea decided to play. Their pressing, their intensity, the way in which they consistently managed to originally isolate Alaba and Militao with Chelsea's two up, which was João Felix and Raheem Sterling. I was looking down at Ancelotti, who was consistently roaring at both Kroos to drop as the pivot to help so that it wasn't always 2v2. This is when Madrid have the ball. So in other words, the idea was that if Chelsea won it, they would consistently be looking to launch beyond. You don't want to defend 1-on-1 or 2v2. So Kroos and Camavinga were consistently being yelled at by Ancelotti just to be more conservative and to make sure that it was always 3v2 while Sterling and João Felix were on the pitch. Until Chilwell's red card, I thought that Chelsea held threat. After Chilwell's red card, it wasn't simply, as you were hinting, that Real Madrid. Thibaut Courtois said it best afterwards. He said, that Espina Clavada, we've got a thorn in our sides about the fact that we should have added a third or a fourth. I hope we don't regret it next week. Madrid were less impressive 11v10. So we come out of this saying, if you want to use a template as Inter's performance at Benfica, Manchester City's performance at home at Bayern Munich, if we want to use a template about any of the ways in which Real Madrid played the return legs against Paris Saint-Germain, or the first leg against Chelsea, or the second leg against Manchester City last season, then last night's performance by Real Madrid comes up short. But they're 2-0 up. They'll enjoy the dimensions of the pitch and the atmosphere at the bridge, and I think they'll go through. But Chelsea were, in attitude and game plan, significantly better last night than I'd expected them to be. And had they been 11 throughout, who knows?
I guess we, as football fans, are really hoping that we're going to see the two legs of Real Madrid versus Manchester City, just to see what happens. Obviously we've seen it before, but we get to see it again this time, and it feels like Pep is getting some kind of higher level of consciousness of what he needs to do with this group to get them over the line, and no better team than Real Madrid over 2 legs for that to happen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful phrase. I write some things in my columns and I say some things loud, but the higher level of consciousness, man, that's very Zen. That's very Buddhist, man. Well done, grasshopper. You need to walk the earth. I think for weeks we've been watching a team that's been making the sound of clicking. And my personal opinion is that incorporating a new style of play and educating a young man who's phenomenally physically and football talented in Erling Haaland, but educating him as to the Manchester City way, the Pep way. People have been, in my humble opinion, very disrespectful about what that takes. I've watched players consistently, whether it be at Barcelona, Bayern Munich or City, not really understand, not really get on the wavelength. There's been enormous pressure on Manchester City to evolve to having a 9, which they hadn't had for a while. Haaland evolving to the movement, the timing, the ideas of both the team, because that's a living entity around you every time you perform in a competitive way, and the coach, because he's demanding certain things of you. It's a big amount of data to build into your head, and then to realize every time that you're not doing what you wanted to do, which is largely how, in my opinion, how Dortmund allowed him to play. I watched him at Dortmund a lot, less at Salzburg, where he was allowed, if he wasn't getting the ball, to drop deep into midfield, be given the ball, and then run at teams and scare the living crap out of them. The system's different. So, for my taste, City have been interesting and impressive in equal measures in the first half of the season, left behind because Arsenal have been dramatically good. But for weeks now, City have looked as if they've clicked. They've got lots of players who look fresh, physically and mentally. And for that reason, again, for weeks, I've been saying I think City can overhaul Arsenal. I think that they're going to be European champions. I think it'll be them against Real Madrid, like you predicted in the semi-final, and I think they'll win. They should have won last time. I think they will win this time. I think they'll win the overall competition. And to be honest with you, I find them intensely fun to watch. I think it's another version. It bears all the hallmarks of a Pep team, but they're playing differently. Several players are playing almost at the peak of their performance, which if you get that in any sport, I missed Sligo Mayo last night, but wherever we're talking about, if you get a core group amongst you playing at the peak of your powers, your coaching's done well, your managerial style is done well because people are convinced they're buying in, and then they're excelling. It feels like they are coming. If they don't win it, then I love to see who beats them. But I think City will win this tournament.
Those 2-leg semi-finals, when we get to see this new-fangled Manchester City defence versus the array of attacking talent that Real Madrid have, is mouth-watering. I did, before we go, want to ask you about Sevilla and Man United, and just what level of threat there is for Manchester United in this, because Rashford is out, Casemiro's back, so it swings and roundabouts a little bit in terms of team selection, but obviously they wanted both. This is a dangerous tie for Manchester United.
It's the mystery and beauty of the dance of the 7 veils of football. What will reveal itself to us, because Sevilla shouldn't really be in with a chance. They've looked slow and disjointed for the majority of the season. They are definitely slow and disjointed in midfield, where Manchester United will have a pretty serious upper hand. I know that occasionally, for example, away at Newcastle, occasionally on the road, United don't necessarily look as powerful as they do when they click at home, or how they click. I thought they were magnificent against Barcelona. So much enjoyed watching the mentality and their understanding of Ten Hag's strategy. I find, again, United extremely impressive in terms of how they've changed, how they've developed, and the way in which several players are reborn. Rashford being out is obviously statistically a major blow. they're not better in every position, man for man, but they are significantly better. Sevilla's coach has got no record of European football. Sevilla shouldn't have a prayer. But, they're stubborn. They are definitely better without their Argentinian coach, Sampaoli, who was like a walking personnel own goal. The players couldn't wait to get rid of him. Things have changed. Sevilla can be stubborn. It's down to Manchester United to demonstrate the superiority that we know that they have, not of budget, but of quality. And therefore, it should be Manchester United all day long, but football is as we know, completely nuts.
Graham, can I just ask you, we got a message in this morning from someone who suggested that Luis Enrique is the man that Spurs should be looking at. You mentioned the sheer numbers on the pitch for Chelsea in the warm-up last night. When you look at the numbers and the egos involved in that Chelsea dressing room, would Enrique be open to a move to Stamford Bridge, do you reckon?
Can we always, if we use his surname, which is Martinez, Luis Enrique being his first name? I have to tread extremely carefully here because having talked to him, I know the answer. So let me pretend I haven't said that and suggest to you, yes.
Yes to Chelsea.
In my opinion, not in my opinion, he's stated categorically that he wants to coach in the Premier League. His English, which is always a potential barrier for foreigners, is extremely good, and he's been working on intensifying the quality of his pronunciation of words. He's gone to detail, not just can I speak English. He's pretty obsessed by the competitive nature, the tradition of the Premier League. There's absolutely no question that he is A, ready to coach again, B, extremely enthusiastic to do so, C, above any league, him having worked at Roma already and won the treble with Football Club Barcelona and coached Spain to a semi-final and final. It's the top end of the Premier League that he wants to go to. He's crystal clear that he will not accept any old project. The two things I can leave you with that are 100% accurate are that he will not coach any club where they don't come to him and say, you are the man we want. It's not in the interview process, convince us. That will come. That can come as part of the discussions. He needs the opening stanza of the discussions to be, we understand how you coach. We understand what you're like. We want you. If Spurs or Chelsea, or Spurs and Chelsea, which is, in my opinion, potentially where we're at, come to him and say that, then it will be a battle to see, which is the better fit, which of them want him more, which between the two clubs he would choose. It's not a market without competitors. There are choices for both clubs out there, but my impression is that it will now be a little bit of a surprise if Luis Enrique Martinez isn't coaching in the Premier League from June onwards. I think it'll be in London, and my opinion is that it will be fun and that he'll be a success.
That's going to make all our lives a bit more interesting. Graham, great to have you with us. Thanks a million, sir. It's Graham Hunter live on the line this morning from Madrid after the game at the Bernabeu last night.